semester 2 just started, so we're in our second half of the year, and students are starting new electives. So I know a lot of kids have some that they're excited about, including myself. And course selection is also happening right around now for grades 8 through 11, which includes a lot of exciting new courses, which you guys heard at the last meeting. And some of these include the U.S. military history elective, or I'm sorry, that might be a full year class. I'm not sure about that actually. Emergency medical technician and dystopian literature elective. There are plenty more amongst those. Those are just to highlight a couple. So I think a lot of kids are going to be excited for that. And course selection is always an exciting time. So that's the bulk of what's happening right now.
So lots of signups for dystopian literature.
I bet there will be. It sounds like an exciting course with a great teacher. So
What's your favorite dystopian novel?
I need to read more, but I mean, The Hunger Games is a classic, and I love The Maze Runner. I haven't read the books, but I love the movies.
Thank you, Emma.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next we have information on Plymouth County Comfort Dogs. Is that correct?
Correct. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Leslie Sattler from Bridgewater State University. She had reached out to me and I was interested. As you know, we have our comfort dog, Lexi, that visits our schools, and Dr. Sattler was looking to do some research on comfort dogs and their impact on schools, and I thought it was a great idea, and as part of the policy, after I approve it, it needs to go to you folks for consideration, so she's here. I know that you received some of the information in your packet, and so she's going to speak a little bit about that.
Yes, so what you're looking at is the Comfort Dog calendar, and there are 4. There's one in each of the red folders, and then I brought 2 extra. But if anybody wants some, we have plenty. Just let me know, and we can send them your way. Thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Leslie Sattler. I represent the School of Social Work at Bridgewater State University. And I've been involved in the Plymouth County Comfort Dog program since January of last year. We conducted a study last year to understand what people thought about the program. And the study that we're proposing for this year is building off of that. So for example, last year we interviewed teachers, counselors, principals, and area agency administrators to hear what they thought about what's happening. And they said, number one, it builds resiliency and well-being. It helps kids learn how to regulate their emotions and cope. They also talked about how it improves learning motivation and attention span in the classroom. And they thought it really added to the school community, that sense of community, and built relationships with law enforcement. And so that study was just us talking to people, just their opinions. So we thought the next logical step was to do an experimental study to really kind of look into that. And so we talked all of this last fall with the handlers and many different school principals where some of our handlers are very established with their dogs, and like what kinds of services are you providing, and looking at are any of these things that we could study. And so we identified 5 specific things we could study. Every school that has a comfort dog does things a little bit differently. So in my proposal, I listed all 5, but not all 5 necessarily will be studied at Wareham. So for example, we want to get a sense of the comfort dog's role in school climate. So we'd like to do a school climate survey with all the schools where a comfort dog is regularly. We also have some schools where the comfort dogs go into those substantially separate classrooms. They might go in for 10 minutes at the beginning of the period to help students just sort of relax and focus. And so we're going to study that in a more organized way where, for example, the teachers will have 3 data points. What's the temperature of the room when the kids first get there? How long does it take them to calm down, to sit at their desk and get going on work, and how long can they stay focused? And what we'll be doing is we'll be having the comfort dogs visit a particular period twice a week, but the teacher will gather data 4 days a week. So we can look at, is there a difference on the days that the comfort dogs are there versus not? Now, not all schools provide that service, so we're only looking at schools that do for that particular thing. And there are 3 other different interventions that we'll offer. And essentially what we're doing is we're having the school administrators, the principals and the handler, decide what's most appropriate for their school. So that's the overview of the study. It's received IRB approval from Bridgewater State. Our measurement tools, our surveys and things have just recently were approved. So we'd like to get permission to start the consent process and to start narrowing down what would we do if we were allowed to in Wareham.
Any questions from committee members? April?
I don't necessarily have a question. I'm very familiar with Star. She's on Plymouth County. She comes to my salon all the time. But, so I think it will be really interesting. I know that just from what I've heard from parents and, you know, and the kids, how excited they get to see the Comfort Dog. I was actually hoping one would be here today,
too.
because I personally think everything is better with a dog. So it will be, I think, really eye-opening to have the statistics to back up that, you know, dogs make everything better. So I'm excited that we were chosen to be a part of it.
Yeah, there's 5. So right now, the Comfort Dogs are in 24 communities? No, 22. One community has 3. And we only selected 5 school districts: Wareham, East Bridgewater, Hingham, Whitman-Hanson, and Plymouth for the first study. And it's a 3-year grant, so every year we're going to add 4 or 5 more schools. So this year is really piloting our services, piloting our tools, making sure they're gathering, you know, working out the kinks, so that the next 2 years we can continue to build on that. So hopefully by year 3, we have a lot of good data.
Very cool. Thank
Do
you.
you know if there's been data before this, like before all the schools accepted it, which made common sense to do, and let's try it? Has there been national data out there about the efficacy of Comfort Dogs?
It's a really good question. There are a lot of studies on using dogs in different ways. And some of the best research I've read really came out of the UK. I think they're a little bit ahead of us in using dogs. But when you look at the literature, dogs have been studied in hospitals for pain management. They've been studied in classrooms that focus on reading comprehension, so we have a lot of good data on how dogs help kids learn to read. We have some data on focus and motivation, but we don't have a lot of data on how do they help build community, how do they help build relationships with law enforcement, and emotion regulation. We have some, it's beginning, but there's not as much as there is on pain relief and reading.
Thank you. Jeff?
Welcome.
Thank you.
A number of questions. One is, you started your conversation with us by essentially saying you have anecdotal evidence that supports the positive impact that the Comfort Dogs have. Are you at all concerned that that's going to put you with a positive bias with respect to this study?
Yeah, you always have to be aware of that. So what we're trying to do is develop the tools that help eliminate that, and we can do some of that through statistical testing once we get all the data in. So like, for example, with the climate study, we're hoping if we do the school climate study across multiple schools in multiple districts, we'll have a large enough sample size where the statistical program can rule out how much of this is just answering by chance, answering by bias. So the more data we get, the more you can identify that. But it's sequential, right? So we got the qualitative data, here's what people think. Now we're like, okay, let's start testing this experimentally. And that's why we want to do those pre and post tests in those control groups, so that classroom where the teacher's studying it, gathering the same data for 4 days and only 2 days the dogs are there, we have a comparison that increases the validity, if you will. So for example, the teachers are going to, by looking at a clock, time how long does it take to get everybody in their seats, and they'll document that. And they'll do that 4 days a week. And then they'll watch the class and they'll time how long did it take before most of them got antsy and stopped focusing, and they'll time that. And they'll do that 4 days a week, regardless if the dogs are there or not. And so by comparing the data from the days the dogs aren't there to the days the dogs are there, that eliminates some of that positive bias because it's strictly quantitative.
I understand. So that gets to my second question, which is, and maybe this is fine, I'll leave that up to the school principal, but are you asking the educators to change their pattern of instruction to accommodate the study?
No, actually, that's a really good question. When I was shadowing, so I've spent half a day with every handler in their schools and just looking at what they typically do. And when we were in specialized classrooms, so I've been talking to teachers for a year now, I'm like, what do you think? How do you think this helps? How would you measure it? What would be the least intrusive thing for you? And so that's, the teachers actually told me, multiple different teachers said, temperature, time. We can do that easily. We collect this data for this kind of stuff all the time. It's not going to interfere with what we do. And they said, if you use Google Forms, that's really fast and easy for us. So we're trying to make it so that we're not interfering with how they run their classroom. We're not interfering by having them learn a new data collection tool. And we're using things that are inherently familiar to them. We don't want to add to their burden.
I get it. Great, thank you. So I associate, and I'm prepared to sit here being totally wrong, but I associate the comfort dogs with being, for example, a way to de-escalate problems that a student is having. But to me, that's an ephemeral impact, whereas you seem to be suggesting there may be impacts that go beyond the ephemeral. Is distinguishing between those two kinds of impacts part of your study?
Not yet. I think I understand what you're saying. So one of the things we are going to assess is the effect of comfort dogs when the handlers and the dogs are called in to help a child who's escalated. We're trying to measure from a child's perspective, how did they feel before the comfort dog got there, and how do they feel after? And we're using the zones of regulation faces. And so it would be a simple survey where once the child is calm, the handler will pull up their phone and ask them to point to a face. How did you feel when you first came in this room? How do you feel now? Now that's still anecdotal, sort of subjective from the child's perspective. That's a first step. There have been studies where what they actually do is take cortisol samples, spit samples, and they look at the level of cortisol before an animal. Yeah, oh yeah, that's where some of the UK research is, and there is
a little invasive too.
Well, yeah, you can do the cheek swabs.
Oh, really? You can do it with a cheek swab?
You can do a cheek swab, or you can have them spit into a tube. Plymouth County would love it if we moved in that direction. But there is research that demonstrates that just the act of petting a dog drops your cortisol levels and increases your oxytocin. So cortisol is that stress hormone, right? And oxytocin is that really feel-good, happy hormone. And so we do have evidence over multiple studies that those two chemicals in particular are affected by petting a dog. So that's some of the theory that goes behind our, okay, let's just see what the kids say in terms of how they felt before and after. You know, we're not at the point where we can gather biological samples yet, but at least we can get from the kids themselves their perspective, because last year all we heard is from teachers, counselors, principals, and area agency administrators. We didn't get a chance to talk to the kids. We also want to talk to the parents. We want to do a survey of the parents too, just to hear, what do you know about the dog? Does your kid talk about the dog? How do you think it affects them? Have you seen them interact? So we want to get some of the more close to the service delivery feedback, as opposed to that outsider going, well, I think it does this.
So I'll be candid, the only thing that troubled me about this survey at all was the opt-out part of the consent. I know this is more difficult, but I would only be willing to vote in favor of this if it was opt-in versus opt-out, just so you know.
Yeah, no, and the opt-out came from principals.
Well,
because we were saying, like, how do you usually approach this? And one of the principals said, well, if you're going to use the dogs to help de-escalate kids, we never know which kids are going to be escalated. So doing an opt-in would be harder.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the principals need an opt-out in order to use the dog. I'm saying to participate in the study involves an opt-out.
Right, yes, exactly. So what they were saying is, so if I have 500 kids, it'll be easier for me to keep track of which kids I can't collect data on.
I understand why it's easier.
Kids can, yeah.
I get it completely.
Yeah.
But too many parents are too busy, and they're going to be surprised that they didn't have a chance to opt And when we tell them, well, you didn't opt out, therefore you were in, and that may be disturbing to some parents.
Yeah.
And that's my concern.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why part of our consent process is for me to be at each school and invite parents in to do an information session with me. And I'd invite the handler and the dog there too. So that's something that I want to arrange is, as part of this consent process, I want to be in the schools at a time that people feel like most parents could come, and so they could ask questions, so they could do a more informed opt-in or opt-out.
So if we amended, I'm not only speaking for myself,
Yep.
just to be clear, if we amended the consent to be opt-in versus opt-out, would you still want us to participate?
I would always want you to participate. I just don't know how many we would get.
I understand.
You know, and if it would be if we get a viable sample.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
That's
May
our
I?
concern.
We can certainly, use our communication systems to really get the information out to parents, and, we can do it a couple of times over just to emphasize, hey, we really, want folks to participate. This will be great information. And so I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, we do have an opt-in form, because if we were going to do focus groups, we would use this opt-in form. So creating that tool is not a problem.
And you're not
Just more
using
of-
children's names in particular, right, so
No
it's not,
identifying information is being collected.
But aren't you targeting specific classrooms, or no?
For the substantially separate, that would be chosen between the handler and the teacher. So for example, at some schools, they already do it,
Right.
so we'll just study what they're already doing.
I'm just saying it would be easier to get those people,
Yeah, those
exactly who
are,
they are to opt
yeah. I think
in.
the hardest thing is the de-escalation, because you never know which kids are ever going to need that kind of service. Yeah, and so when handlers are helping somebody de-escalate, they'll have to know, before I ask to gather this data, did this child have permission for me to gather the data? And so to make that a little bit easier, like maybe an opt-out would be easier. Because then it'd be easier to know, oh, you can't gather data on this child because we don't have consent, versus rifling through hundreds of kids' names to go, yes, you can gather data on this situation.
Joyce, question?
So I do share your concern, Jeff, about opting in versus opting out, because I feel like if we vote yes to this, and I agree that it's a valuable study, and we're really voting for them, right? We're
Yeah.
choosing for them. So my other question is about classrooms and teachers. So do they also have the option to opt out, or, so how is that done? So what if I'm a teacher who says, I just don't have an extra 10 minutes in my day, I can't do that?
So the consent is for gathering the data. So we're not gathering data on teachers.
No, but the teacher is the one who's going to say, well, fill out the form. You were just talking about information that a teacher would put into a Google form. So if we were to say yes to the study, would every teacher in the district then be?
No. That's where it's going to come down to the handler and the principal to work with their school to say, are we already doing this? And then to talk to that teacher, do you want to be part of it? Because if the
Okay.
teacher doesn't want to be part of that, then we wouldn't go. into
Okay,
that
so the
process.
teacher would have a choice?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
they have to be fully on board, or it wouldn't work anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, because we would ask them to gather data for a month. So,
And I'm sure they would be happy to do it, but I'm sure there would also be cases where,
yeah.
their time is so limited.
Yeah, no, and inviting a dog into your classroom, I think, has to be voluntary. Not every teacher's going to want that.
Okay.
I think the fact that there's no identifying information, and when we send home packets at the beginning of the school year, it's like a checkbox if you want your child to be photographed or not photographed, and it is the same thing, it's opt-out as opposed to opt-in for any of the stuff that we do with that kind of promotional information. I think it would be, like you said, a lot harder to figure out a sample of data if this is generally beneficial, if people really don't understand. So I do appreciate that you want to do an information session to the parents. and the community, and that Dr. DeAndrea is willing to use all of the channels of communication that we have, our website and our socials, and I'm sure that, you know, anything that regards the dog, if there's mention that the dog will be there, I think people would be interested in coming. And I know that my son, we have animal videos above our shampoo sinks because of that same thing, the releasing of the positive, you know, energies and stuff. So people watch puppy videos while they're getting their head shampooed, so it's like a double delight at the time. But I think it would be, I don't think an opt-in version seems efficient, in, like you had said. I think I agree with you more than I agree with Jeff and Joyce on that. And as someone who had a student more recently in the district, I think it's what they did with, you know, can we photograph your kid and put it on the website? It was easier to opt out than in.
But the difference is that form goes back, I believe, with every parent's signature. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe for the superintendent, like if there's an opt-out, opt-in, there's a whole packet that goes home to the parents. They sign it, and some things are opted out or not on that. So you know who's returned them. In this case, you don't know because you don't hear. I agree with you. I think very few people would object to this, in my opinion. But I do worry about the opt-out myself.
But is there another way? Would it be useful to, like, have the parent have to click that they read it and then they chose to opt out? Would that satisfy that concern? Because if we're sending them the consent via a Google form, we would know the parents had opted out because we would see their email signature, if I understand Google Forms correctly. But if the concern is you're not sure that every parent's going to read it, would it help if we did that? First, I acknowledge receiving this and I understand.
Yeah, may work. Jeff, you got to answer that, or?
I'm just thinking out loud.
Well, I think, oh, sorry, were you going to answer?
Well, we're both thinking out loud, so that's fine. I guess if the default is opt-in, so if nothing happens, if the parents don't take any action, and it's assumed that everything's fine, to me, that doesn't work, even though I understand it's much more efficient.
Right.
If what you're describing is an action by a parent that consciously opts out or in, then I'm totally comfortable with it, because there is no default. They have to take an action to have one thing or another
They have to show
happen.
that they've read the form
Exactly.
and deliberately, yeah.
So if that was the case, I'd be comfortable.
Okay. I think, I'm new to Google Forms. Is that something we can do?
Yes.
Okay.
So for the, you'll have a reply, so it'll either be yes, opt in, or no, opt out, or you'll have no reply. So the no replies will be opt out unless you hear back from them.
I would think it would be opposite.
No, what I was thinking, we'd have I acknowledge I read this.
Well, right, and so,
And then if they don't,
but if there's
that would be-
no reply at all, because
if
there's
no
going to be a
reply at
lot
all,
of
then it would
those.
be opt out.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
As long as that
No
was-
reply is an opt out.
Yeah, yep. And a reply is an oh, wait.
Well, they'd have to choose one
And a
or the other.
reply,
Reply is in.
and a reply could be
So
either.
Yeah.
so an opt out is I reply and say, I do not want my child. That's how the language of opt out works, right? That's how we wrote our forms, that if you're okay with your child, I'm not quoting it directly, but if you give permission for your child to participate, no action is needed, no further action is
That's
needed.
correct. That's what you say.
That's what we're
But you
saying.
don't know that they read it.
Well, that's why I'm saying if we put in a question, I acknowledge I read this, and then they don't, and if they're okay, they don't do anything else.
I'd be okay with that, personally. I think that might be a compromise.
What was the first statement?
I acknowledge that I read this form.
Yeah, but before that, it was
Oh,
unless,
If you grant your child permission to participate in this study, no further action is required.
okay.
And there'll be emphasis that none of their child's personal information
Yeah,
is a
that's
part of
all
the
written
study.
in the
It's,
consent.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a slippery slope these days with
Yeah, I think
privacy
so.
As long as they read it.
and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. I could live with that.
yeah, as long as it says.
Yes, I'm more
Maybe it could-
digitally
maybe-
willy-nilly than everybody else,
No
because I'm just
response.
like, there's no
Maybe you could
personal
just say
information, let's go.
very clearly that you have read this, and if you don't request otherwise, your child will participate, or however.
Well, and if
Right.
there's any questions regarding it, contact your building principal, I would think would be the next logical
But then the
step.
school, if they wanted to, could follow up with parents that have not acknowledged that they've read it, if they wanted to.
If they wanted to, right.
Right.
So the amendment would consist of the parent must acknowledge reading the consent in order for the opt-in to be,
Opt out.
no. I'm trying
Because if we're
to,
going to do an opt-in, we might as well just say, I give my child permission.
Right.
So what
Right,
I was,
I acknowledge reading it, and I'm willing to have my child participate. Check.
Yes.
oh, well, then it's clear.
that's
Oh,
an
and then-
opt-in.
And then you,
Yeah.
right.
But
and
that's
then
not
you
what we
could
were just
have-
saying.
But I thought you were saying.
Also have, I do not want my child to participate, so you get either one.
Well, I
You get a
understand, but
response.
I thought you were describing a middle ground.
I read this, and then no
Yes.
further action means I'm good,
Yes.
versus,
And I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Even though it's a middle ground.
Okay.
And the chair and I were just discussing how I was going to make the motion so that we'd have something to vote on.
Wait, do we have to motion on the verbiage, or are we only making a motion to participate in the study, period?
Well,
We're
we're
going to vote
making,
to participate
Conditioned
conditioned
upon-
upon.
Yeah.
Okay, I would just clarify.
I move that we vote to approve the study based upon a consent form that acknowledges the parents having read the form.
okay. So I can move
I
on
would
to that
agree.
and send it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 500. Motion passes.
So should I send the revised form to you, to?
Me.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very much.
Next time, bring the dog.
Next time what?
Bring the dog.
You don't control the dog.
I'll bring all
Next
the
time,
dogs.
bring a dog.
Yeah,
Doesn't
no,
have to
I
be
do.
And
one.
my dog volunteers.
If you haven't had a chance to meet them all, we can invite them to come.
Yes,
Yeah.
always.
So.
Always
I'll put
bring a
little
dog.
pitch for the Plymouth County. If you have any kind of event that they can justify as a training event for them, where they'll bring their trainers to help the dogs learn to manage a new situation, then you can get multiple dogs coming to visit. So if you have an assembly or any kind of event,
Got it.
they'll come.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right, next up,
And, excuse me, and we're getting a copy of the results, correct?
Yes, and actually, Plymouth County is going to be releasing the results of the last study. And then after, we usually have the reports all generated for them by the end of September. And then once they go through, they'll send it off.
One more thing. I thought I remember reading that the IRB approval was only for 1 year and then it had to be renewed.
Yeah, that's standard procedure.
It is standard? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that's standard procedure.
all-
You can file an amendment to a renewal form.
Even though you anticipate it going 3 years?
Yes.
Okay.
And anytime they make any changes, I have to file an amendment. So like changing this consent form, I may have to file an amendment, but that's okay.
Good luck.
all right, next up, we have a vote on obsolete furniture, and this was included in the superintendent's report.
Right, so you've seen the superintendent's newsletter. There is really obsolete equipment that we're asking for you to vote as obsolete. There's 19 old box TVs from the high school that no longer work, 4 flat-screen TVs in very poor condition. They do not work at all. The Wareham, the high school culinary, there's a mixer that has no safety cage, and it's unsafe. And also a refrigerator, a true refrigerator, that's the brand name, that's not working correctly. It leaks. And so we'd like to have that also. We would properly recycle that, of course. And then Fields and Ground, we have the dump truck and the pickup truck that are out of commission or unsafe, the cracked frame, rusted out, and no longer start. And so we'd probably look to scrap those. So I ask for you to vote those items obsolete.
Couple questions, April and Jeff?
In regards to, which I know I always ask, so anything that can be, like with the vehicles, I'm assuming, like anything that we can find out when those are deemed obsolete or scrapped, or if we could get like what we were able to recoup from anything of the obsolete?
Oh, sure,
I
absolutely.
would like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jeff?
So I certainly trust Steve and Bob on these vehicles. Have they been replaced?
We replaced one of them.
Yes, we did. At town meeting this year, we were afforded funds to purchase a new truck for Fields and Grounds. So that has been ordered. And
That's
we're
the dump
just
truck?
awaiting. Yes, we're just awaiting
Okay.
delivery, correct.
Okay, and the Chevy pickup, we don't need to replace? Is that a fair statement?
The dump truck was definitely the priority at this point.
So, but we're trying to get rid of the Chevy pickup as obsolete, correct?
Correct.
And if that happens, will we need to replace it, is my question.
We're not replacing it at this time. We have two trucks that we have been using, and that's been working.
Okay, thank you.
All right, a motion to accept, to approve the obsolete furniture? So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. Okay, now we have the district calendar.
Yes, so in your packet was the draft Wareham Public Schools District Calendar for the 2025-26 school year. This has been reviewed by administration. This has been reviewed and approved by the union. It essentially mirrors previous calendars. There's nothing really unusual in this compared to other calendar years. So I ask for your approval for the calendar for next year so we can get it out to families.
April,
I just have
question?
a quick question. On the October and the April holiday observed, is that Indigenous Peoples' Day and Good Friday? And is there a reason that it just says holiday observed and not either of those days?
It says that because that's what Mr. Sweat asked for last year, for it to be called.
Oh,
So
I
changed
missed that, I misremembered, okay.
Can I ask a question, just especially with Deanna here from representing the union maybe? I know every once in a while when we have vacations, every once in a while you get those 2 weeks off in a row. I just was wondering out loud to myself, does everyone want to go those 10 days in the middle of the year and still push the year out in June? Or was there any talk about maybe going 8 days and getting out earlier in the school year?
We did poll our members, and unanimously, everybody wanted to keep it as it is.
Tell them to remember that in June.
I know. No snow days, hopefully.
No snow days, right?
So can we just talk about that for a minute? I did a really unscientific survey in the last couple of days, and I appreciate that you polled your membership, but I talked to teachers from 2 buildings, administration, and everyone I talked to didn't want the 2 full weeks. They'd rather have the day and a half in June, right? Come back for Monday, half-day Tuesday before Christmas. And again, very unscientific survey. But when I saw this schedule, I just thought, wow, the 19th. And then school is not daycare, but parents are going to, the kids are going to be home for 2 full weeks. So I don't know, just for many reasons, that's why I asked those questions. And the way it works now, like, let's say we have 2 snow days. We're going to go, because of June 19th, we're going to go. Have you heard that already? Is that why you're rolling your eyes at me?
And I hope that all the snow happens in the 2 weeks they're already out of school. It's winter.
Well,
Let's
right,
cross
but
our
we're going to
fingers.
flip over now. We're going to be going June 20-something. It's going to be the last day of school.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing is this year, when they went back for the Thursday, Friday, that was a really short week too, right? But everyone said, well, how great it was.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be awesome to come back for that day and a half before Christmas? You'd still have,
That's a little different.
okay.
That's really different. Coming back at the end after Christmas is over, I think people felt like it was kind of a nice way to segue back in. It would require us to change our contract because we don't technically go the day before Christmas Eve. According to our contract, we
I
don't.
thought it was just a half a day before Christmas vacation.
No, we have the day off before Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas Eve. So we would have had to change that as well.
All right.
But,
I'm not trying to be Scrooge. I'm
No,
just
I know.
think ahead, and us get to
I-
December and say, why do we do this? Why
I
did we just
asked
go to school those days?
particularly because of that. And it was, I had to go with the majority, it wasn't unanimous, but I had to go with the majority. And it was very little. I mean, we even talked about Good Friday, possibly coming to school on Good Friday. So I put that in the thing, and only a few people were for going to school on Good Friday.
And then what would that do? It would just shorten the year in June.
Just give us an extra day.
Right. All right. Well, I appreciate that the people I talked to, were honest with me, and I hope we don't regret it in December. That's all.
In June.
Well, in June too. But I mean, I just hope we don't get to December
And then
and
decide.
say, why did we vote for that? That's why I want to talk about it and think about it now while we have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you think it's worth us putting off a vote on this and talking about it some more?
Well, I would have said no, but if you're telling me that you talked with a number of people.
Yeah.
That-
I mean, I didn't talk to 100 people, but,
No, and I didn't get the full, because you never do on surveys,
Right.
right? You just get who feels like, so yeah, I mean, if we
Yeah.
want to put it out again.
Yeah,
I don't have a
Deanna would
problem.
need to have her membership agree to come on the 23rd. That would be her challenge.
So would that be an early release day, or would it
It would
be?
be it would be a half day.
So what is
Yeah.
that? Is that 10,
Would it be
What
on
is-
the 22nd, because you said in their contract, it's already the day before Christmas Eve
right, no,
off?
but she was
Well, I
saying
would
she'd
have
have
to-
to have them agree to that.
Oh,
Have like
I
a
getcha, to see if they would amend. Okay.
But why couldn't you just do the night, even if you just came full day on the 19th and a full day on the 22nd, and even the half day on the 23rd, you're saying you'd have to have
Yeah,
approved? Okay, I got you.
I mean, coming in,
And what's the attendance
the
going to be
second?
like on the
Second
Monday?
is a Friday?
Anyways, if we
Yeah.
just come back for one day, parents are going to be like, well, I'm not
Right,
sending them
so
for one
if-
day.
if- So we've talked a lot about this,
Okay.
around and around. And the 22nd, so if we didn't go on the 23rd, the 22nd would have to be a half day. So we would come in for a half day on the 22nd, and I didn't think that was,
The attendance would be not there
Right.
anyways. Nobody would show up.
and so it
count.
would make sense that Deanna would have to have her membership say, yes, it's okay to go on the 23rd. So then we would have a full day on the 22nd and that half day on the 23rd. But to your point, we'd get 2 days in.
Right.
That wouldn't be tacked on to the end of the school year.
And, I mean, would it be fair to say that a day and a half in December is more productive than a day and a half in June? I don't want to imply that June isn't productive, but,
I would agree with that.
yeah, I have no problem. I remember you said there's a deadline to get it to DESI, that's.
correct, February 1st.
So that's like,
We do it in January of every year.
but in prior years, we've changed
You
it.
can amend it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we do submit the first one to DESI February 1.
So, yeah, that's what we could do and then talk about amending.
Yeah, so let's
You
talk
could-
about
would
it.
have to
So we
approve
could
it Tonight.
approve this tonight with the idea if we wanted to amend it, we could amend it?
Yeah, I mean, there have been
Depending
years
on-
we've changed it 3 times
Sure.
over the.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeff, you had a question?
So, the customer here, with due respect to the staff, and this table has no, we don't have any impact on it at all, except for Emma. And the customer are parents and students.
Sure.
Do the parents and students care about this issue?
I think it depends on the age of
Sure,
the
some of them
students.
do.
And do we have any idea how they feel about it?
I do not.
A senior would love the 2 weeks of Christmas.
Do you,
Oh, right, because they don't have to.
Yeah, they don't have to make them up.
do you feel comfortable representing, 2,000, students and parents?
I mean, I don't think I could represent every
I'm
one of
kidding.
them, but.
But do you have any thoughts on this?
So is the question about 2 extra days in December? Or
In June.
Versus June.
versus June? I think it's kind of tough because you guys talked about productivity in June versus December, but at that rate being so late into December and Christmas break being right around then, you kind of get a similar feeling to in June when it's, we're about to be on vacation, we're going to be out for a while. So I think there's a similar feeling there. And I just want to make sure I understand. Would it be a break for some days and then you come back for the 2 days? Or is it in the middle of days that you have off, or it's
Well,
before that
Christmas is on a
Christmas break?
Thursday. So this is proposing that vacation starts on the Friday before.
Okay.
And we're just tossing around the idea of coming back on Monday, half-day Tuesday, and then Wednesday is Christmas Eve, and then Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Which would shorten June.
I think it is tough because, kids love to get out earlier in the summer, but I think a lot of kids would also want the slightly longer break in the winter. And I think it being, just coming in for a day and a half wouldn't be the worst in ways, but I think kids it would take some adjusting to, in a way, because they're used to maybe a longer break, and they would probably miss those 2 days. But,
Around Christmas.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think the way that the holiday falls too, with travel for people that are leaving to visit family, you now are out the day before Christmas Eve. That's gonna put a wrench in a lot of people's,
Travel plans.
exactly, their travel plans that might be, a lot of people might not necessarily go away for the summer, but they may go for that, and it
So,
might
Matt-
overlap.
yeah.
Could you, I don't get a clear sense that you feel strongly about it one way or the other. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think, in my personal opinion, not speaking for any other students, I would probably prefer the days in December to have off and have the slightly longer break, but that's my personal opinion.
Understood. Totally unfair question to ask you. Matt, what is the process with regard to this calendar? Meaning, who creates it, and then what's the next step and the next step?
Jamie and I create it,
Okay,
and then I bring it to the admin team,
okay.
and we kick it around.
Okay. Did the admin team change anything after you and Jamie created it?
Yeah, they did,
They did? Okay.
Yes.
And this is before Deanna got it?
correct,
Okay. So then the next step after the admin team was Deanna?
yes.
Okay. Did you change anything after you got it?
Yes.
I think we did. I think we might have changed a couple of PD days. We, moved things around. So, yeah,
Okay, and that had to go back to the principals?
yes,
Okay, and they approved it?
yes.
Okay, I move approval.
Second.
Are we,
Any other discussion?
you move an approval without, we're
With
not
the-
going to reconsider?
Well, if we,
With the
if
full knowledge that we can amend it.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. All right, because we had a lot of discussion
I get it.
about, okay.
I don't feel comfortable, after the process you described, saying this committee should amend it when we have the power to amend it if after the fact, it's appropriate. But it sounds like the process was a very constructive one, and I don't feel like...
Right, like, have you heard from your membership, oh, wait, we were thinking it, you could bring it back to us at that point,
It's
maybe?
It sounded very collegial. I'm not comfortable. But I acknowledge that your anecdotal evidence suggests that, and it wasn't unanimous, so if we want to amend it, we can.
Right. I mean, is it something that you have, like a Zoom meeting for your members?
I did a Google
Oh,
Forms.
you did, okay.
Yeah.
All right,
I can probably access it.
yeah.
I mean, it
Well, I
was
mean, a
not-
Zoom meeting, a Google survey is going to get more response than a Zoom meeting probably, right? You probably,
Probably.
yeah.
Yeah.
I-
It
I'm
went out
guessing.
to everybody. And, we have just under 300 members. I probably got a little over 100 responses.
That's a pretty good sample.
So everyone had an opportunity to respond.
Everybody did, yeah.
Okay.
Much like the opt-in.
All right, so we have a
opt-out.
motion on the floor and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Thank
Abstained?
you, Deanna.
500, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we have the report of the superintendent. First up is the transportation MOA and the vote required by the school committee.
Correct. So we negotiated with the bus drivers for, their contract is ending at the end of the school year, so we had to negotiate a successor contract for August 2025 through July of 2028. And some of the highlights are salary adjustments, 2.25% next year, and then 2.5 and 2.5 and then the following 2 years. And then there was some additional logistics around the running of the department that were revised. We cleaned up language. We did add some personal and sick time to the contract, increased the longevity, added a holiday. That was generally it. It was a good exchange with the bus drivers, and I appreciate their the work that everyone did on this. So I ask that you approve the agreement.
So moved.
And we met earlier tonight in executive session to look at it in detail. So I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
Thank you. Before I go to the mid-cycle review, I just, in the superintendent's newsletter, we have payroll and bill warrants that I ask that you approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
Thank you. And I also have a gift that we received, the paper store here in Wareham. Part of their mission is to support local organizations. And this year, and I think they did this last year also, they put out a gift of giving annual charity event where if you purchased a certain ornament, some of the money was donated to Wareham Public Schools. And after all said and done, they sent us a check for $817.38. So thank you very much to the paper store and their support to the public schools, and I ask that you accept that gift.
So moved.
Second.
Jeff, comment?
To which fund does that $800 go?
It'll be established in its own fund. It'll be a separate gift, the paper store gift fund.
And the principals request access to it, or how does it get spent?
Right, so, the paper
Superintendent.
store, yes, the paper
Oh,
store
no.
places no restrictions on how we can spend it. We can spend it, as.
So it could support the LEA budget, for example, theoretically?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
All right, so we had a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 500. Thanks to the paper store.
Okay, and so I just wanted to give you, or at least it's scheduled to give you an update on my goals that we set way back in August when it was warm out. And so the document that I shared with you has the goals document that I shared back in August. And what I did is I put some notes, bulleted items down on the bottom that just speak to the progress that have been made in each goal. So the first one is the development of the early education and care program at the Wareham High School by establishing the integrated preschool program. And so what we did is, first thing, we've identified the classroom. It's going to be room 129, and that sounds like an easy thing to do, but we had to really find plans for the high school and find a classroom that we could access that had a sewer line running into it, because we need to put a bathroom in. So there was a lot of looking at plans and identifying which room would be best for that. We're looking at applying for, or we are applying for a grant that's called the Commonwealth Preschool Partnership Initiative Grant that will fund the teacher, para, furniture, and supplies for the program. We'll be applying for that grant. It is, we've received the first part of that grant, which you may remember that I believe that we had some folks come and present on that preschool grant last year. And so we received the first part to do a needs assessment, and the second part will include this classroom in it. And there's up to $750,000 available in that grant if we receive it. We received some really positive feedback when we spoke to them about this program, and so I'm feeling optimistic about that, about receiving that grant. The playground, we just met with some folks yesterday. There will need to be a playground also for the kids that will fund through gift accounts. We met with a playground group yesterday that builds and installs playgrounds, and they're going to be giving us some renditions and cost options for that. The bathroom installation, we plan to do that right after the school lets out in June. That'll be funded through one-time funding sources. The issue with the bathroom is that we have to tie it into the sewer line that runs under the classroom. So we have to, jackhammer down into the floor to tie that in. So that's why we're gonna do it when students are not in the building. So Eric is working on getting that arranged for right after school lets out. The students, any special ed students in the program will be serviced through that CPPI grant. The CPPI grant, in addition to funding this class, will also be funding positions that will do some service work in our neighboring preschools, such as Best Friends and Little People's College. So those positions will also come in and service students in the classroom at the high school. We're looking at about a class size of 15 students, 12 of them being peer students and 3 special ed to start. So that's kind of where I am with that goal.
April?
What is a one-time funding source?
So right now, I'm looking for, it's either going to be one of the gift accounts that we have, or we're going to have to find it, money in this year's budget to fund it for its installation. But what I mean by one-time funding, it's not a reoccurring expense. It's not something that has to be budgeted on a yearly basis. We're just going to find one-time monies that we can use to pay for it. And once it's installed, we're good.
Do you have a cost estimation for that already?
Probably about $30,000
For the
for
bathroom
everything.
install?
Yeah.
And that part of the grant funding doesn't cover
It
like
does
anything
not.
capital related like
Does
that?
not.
How many high school students do you think will be involved with this program, like, and going into those classrooms during the day? Any idea yet?
I don't have an idea for that just yet, no.
Is that something that survey data could be put out to see how many students are interested in this as a class?
Yeah, actually, they're starting to register for classes now, so we'll probably be able to have a better
This will be
idea
listed,
soon.
right? That's listed in the
Right,
program?
because you
Right.
guys just assumed, just approved the
Course of study?
course of studies, yeah.
Jeff and Joyce?
The CPBI grant, the second bullet, the teacher, I assume, would be an ongoing, multi-year expense. So assuming the CPPI grant comes through, which you have reason to be optimistic, this would have to be, in year 2 onward, would have to be incorporated into the LEA budget. Is that a fair statement?
It's a 3-year grant,
Okay.
but then after that, yeah, if they don't extend it after that, then the district would definitely have to look to.
Well, at least it's 3 years. Okay.
Joyce?
So is this an extension of the existing preschool at the elementary school, or is it a separate preschool?
Right now, well, it would be an extension, but right now, I'm looking to add a class. That's where I'm at, not taking one of those classes and putting it over.
No, that's what I
Right.
mean, is
But it would-
another classroom. So this teacher, going to report to Scott Palladino, or is this teacher going to
No.
report to the preschool
The
people at the
preschool,
elementary
yes,
school?
would be
Okay.
connected with that group, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the class size, 12 peers and 3 special ed, that's, I guess I should ask, is that a different ratio
It is.
class? I thought it was.
I didn't think that was legal.
The ratio in an integrated preschool is 8 pairs, 7 special ed.
Okay,
So this is based on my initial conversation with the department chair for the preschool, that we would start with a smaller number here to make sure that we, as we look for services for them, that we can get the services to
Right.
them that they need.
but 8 plus 7 is the same as 12 plus 3, so
Right.
it's just a different ratio, right?
Correct.
Right, so, sorry, I didn't know if we were, I thought we were required to have that ratio.
So, and we may be, we're still, as we're applying for this grant, and they may come back and say, we want this ratio compared to that. It may be only certain students that have specific needs that would be in this program. I'm kind of leaning on the folks that are more immersed in this and know that, and the CPBI grant itself around, what they're going to make us do, and then adjusting the program to that. But initially, we had thought we would keep a smaller number of special ed students there. And you may be right. They may come back and say, you have to have that 8-7 ratio, and then we'll work on that.
And families pay now for students to attend preschool, and so this would be the same? They would
Yes.
pay the same? Would it ever be true that the money that's collected for preschool would pay for a teacher?
Yes. Do we use some of it now to
We do,
offset?
we do. It pays for one teacher. The tuition pays for one preschool
All of the
teacher.
preschool pays for one teacher, so one classroom isn't going to pay for one teacher,
Right.
obviously.
Although 12 paying
42,000.
is a lot more money than 8 paying.
Right,
Right.
okay, thank you.
April?
Is part of the thought process of having less on, with the ratio that it is, because it will be high school students, like, kind of learning and managing the classroom out at the gate, as opposed to fully trained teachers that have an integrated classroom?
That was an initial, no, it was just more to make sure that we could have the services there that the students needed, that
And-
those special ed students.
With that many students of a preschool age, how many high school students could be in that room for the classroom to make it effective? Like, would there then have to be or is it going to be because it's rotating periods as an elective, or is it multiple, like, how is that going to work with, like, I know part of the thing with a lot of the younger kids is like consistency and continuity and routine, and if you're having a revolving door of upperclassmen coming through on an hourly basis, as well-intended as it might be, is that going to be more disruptive to that population?
Yeah, they definitely don't want it to be disruptive, and there are models out there that districts are using, and I can find out exactly what it is, and hopefully in my final report to you guys, I'll be able to give you that information. I just don't have that right now.
Thank you.
Okay, second goal was the EMT certificate program as part of the, it says public safety pathway, but it got moved into the environmental science career pathway. So what we will do is we'll contract with the service provider, and we have identified a company in Fairhaven that can do it. It will cost $21,320. For the year. This would have to be a line item in the budget because this will be a reoccurring expense. This would be for juniors or seniors to participate in, part of the life science career pathway, as I said. And so, as you saw, that it was in the program of studies. And I think that the challenge right now is just identifying this 21,000. I think we're gonna have to identify it for the FY '26 budget in the budget that we have now. But I don't think it's, you know, the 21,000 is 21,000. I think we'll be able to do it, though. And then that would be a line item that would remain in the budget.
Oh, sorry, I was just
That's outside.
distracted
It's
by,
outside.
it was outside, yes. April?
Are there grants available? I know with like a lot of EMT courses that you have, you know, like dummies for performing CPR and training and different materials like that. Are there any grants that you've looked into for materials to offset any of this, or would this outside contracted
That
company come in
includes
and bring
all the
everything?
materials.
So is the materials a one-time thing for the students, or do they, every year, you need new material, and they just bring it and leave it? Or is that stuff that's gonna become property of Wareham Public Schools?
No, it would be, it's property of the group that comes in and does it, that, any materials that the students need, books, things of that nature, that's included in the 21,000, and the students would take that with them. But any training materials, like you said, you know, if there's dummies and things like that, that would be the property of the group that is doing that instruction.
And there were no possible, like, public safety grant towards this or on other districts that have utilized, or it's
Not that
you've found?
not that I've seen.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on this goal? All right, goal number 3.
Okay, the annex. All right, this one, you know, I've gone around and around on. We are going to take back the annex. Turning Point has found a place over by Deacon's that they'll be moving into. And we're going to be going to the Capital Planning Committee and requesting roughly $200,000 to upgrade that building. We'll do some facilities upgrades and some upgrades to the technology that's necessary. For next year, the PASS program will utilize the building. As far as, you know, the day school, right now I'm looking at having the building back and transitioning programs over as funding allows. And I say that because, as you know, we're looking at $850,000 that we have a shortfall. And you have to look at, you know, priorities, and there's so much money to go around, and I don't feel good about cutting money out of other programs in our schools to move programs over there at this time. So I feel that the best way forward is get the building, make the upgrades as we can, get our PASS program in the building and using it, and then working with the high school on transitioning programs over as we can fund it in the current budget.
So the LEA budget is not used at all in this scenario?
In this scenario, right. So that would bring that $850,000 shortfall down to $650.
Oh, because you had included.
Because we had put $200,000 in. And so, you know, I base this on, this was, like I said, in August, and we were hopeful in August that we would have that money. We developed the budget, we learned that it would be $850,000. Chapter 70, you know, the governor's budget came out, it doesn't look like we're gonna get any more money. I don't feel right at this time cutting in our schools to staff that at this time.
April?
So one of the other things that you were hoping to accomplish with reopening this as like the like kind of the alternative school would be eventually tuitions from out-of-district students to be able to put into that situation as well, correct?
That's what I was hoping, yeah, that would offer that opportunity.
Okay.
And I know I pushed you last year in your evaluation to reopen the annex for the purpose of trying to help with students that need that transition time, but I fully understand in this fiscal mess we're facing that now's not the time to maybe do that. So at least we got our foot in the door, so to speak, and hopefully down the road we can figure out a way to populate it maybe with more day students at some point.
Right.
Joyce?
I just want to be clear, because I have asked you about this, so I think I know the answer to this question. The upgrades to the building, I mean, it's just going to be minimal. Enough to get the building to a
Right, the
place where
building's
it
in
can be
pretty good
used.
shape.
It is. it
Turning
is.
Point did a lot of work to it when they
Right.
took it over in the first place.
And, just to make sure, I want to make sure all the exits are safe for kids walking on them. The door frames, we're looking at maybe putting on a new roof. We'll see how that, the cost of that. But mostly a lot of tech and maybe some painting and things like that.
Well, like Kevin said, when you proposed this, it was a great idea, but as things have evolved, I totally agree with what you're saying.
I suspect Mr. Palladino is quite disappointed.
He is, however, he's happy that we have the building back.
I
And then
understand.
we can start, looking at ways how we can use it.
But it's just a fiscal problem, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and the final one was to work on work with the evaluation subcommittee, looking at student learning goals, looking at performance indicators in the evaluation program. I've met with the evaluation subcommittee on October 28th and January 15th. We have another meeting on February 13th. We've completed and we developed or revised a survey. We surveyed our evaluators and we reviewed that data. We reviewed some evaluation data from Wareham, from our Wareham teaching staff, and we began looking at or talking about what is the criteria for an exemplary rating. And so that's what we're going to be talking about at our February 13th meeting. And they've been going very well. We've had some really good discussions. We've gotten some really good information from the surveys that we've done. I've invited some additional folks to come to our February 13th meeting. So I feel like we're making some good progress there.
Questions on this particular
Not
vote?
on this one, but I did have another one. Another one came to me from the previous one, so whenever.
Yeah,
anyone's
let's
done.
finish this one
Yep.
first, and we'll go back.
I don't have any questions.
Jeff?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, April, we'll go back to,
Sorry, so I know you said moving the PASS program over to the building. Is there, is it basically just so that, because we wanted to have this as a goal, that's to get people
No,
in the
PASS-
building? Or are they
PASS
asking to go into that building?
They're asking for, they have been very excited about this opportunity.
Is that going to allow for more out-of-district tuitions for the PASS program? So that, because I know that that's self-sustaining, correct?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
that's
I don't
itself?
think it allows for more, but it certainly will continue to accept school choice students as we have in the past.
Okay, thank you.
all right, so this is basically the mid-cycle
This is
checkup.
this is just for your
The checkup and not the autopsy.
information, and then the next step is down the road.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, we have policy review votes. April?
Okay, so policy review met, and we went over 5 policies. 4 of them were there were no changes, so I'll just quickly go through the ones with no changes, and then I'll come back to the one that did have an edit, if that's okay. So the first one was alcohol, tobacco, and drug use by students prohibited, and that was accepted with no changes. So I'd like a motion to accept that policy as written.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, 500.
The next policy was meals policy and pricing, and this was double-checked by the head of the food services, and there were no changes made to this policy, so I make like a motion to accept as written.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, 500.
So the third was the minimum wage policy, and again, this was more recently adopted in 2019, and it was just also accepted that we, as is, just that we follow the Massachusetts minimum wage guidelines and not the federal, which we had done previously. So there was no changes made to this policy, so I'd like a motion to accept this policy as written.
So moved.
Second, could I just ask a question?
Yep.
I guess my question is for Kristen. So I remember when this policy was adopted, and it had to do with the daily, like, with substitute pays, substitute para pays, those are daily amounts. And in the past, if you took the pay and divided it by the hours, it didn't always come out to minimum wage. So are we just watching that and making sure? I mean, I don't think minimum wage went up this year, right? Maybe it went up last year. Is it 15?
15.
Yeah.
I did calculate, I could go back, I did calculate for, I think it was, you said para sub pay?
Yeah.
And I believe it was a little bit over $15 an
Okay.
hour, yeah.
Okay. I mean, in the past, I think it was below, so.
Yeah, so I can double check that, but I did do it quick.
Okay,
Because
all
I
right,
thought
good.
that question might come up.
Yeah,
All right,
when I was a
thank you.
para sub, it was $7.25.
Yeah.
So I'm glad it's now minimum wage for them. so.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
So then I'm going to skip the fourth one, go straight to the fifth one, and then we'll go back. So the fifth one was purchasing, and that one, again, the only things that were really double-checked was that the MGL chapters that were mentioned were up to date, and otherwise that was voted with no changes. So I would accept a motion to accept this one as written as well.
So moved.
Question, Jeff?
Yeah, I have no desire to change a word on it or a punctuation, but I am curious as to whether the town has any concerns, involvement in this policy.
In the policy, I don't think so,
Yes,
per
if the
se.
town read this policy, would they have any problem with it? Based on how they respond at the moment to your purchasing?
I don't think so. I think as long as we are providing documentation that we're following Mass General Law in Chapter 30B, which is supplies and services, you know, for other ones, public construction and public works.
Do they have a copy of this?
I can check, do they do?
They
Okay.
do? Good, thank you.
Okay, so a motion to accept is written?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
And then the fourth policy was public participation at school committee meetings. We just clarified and we took the paragraph B and just made it in line with what, oh my, God, the school committee, MASC, sorry, I don't know why the acronym was escaping my brain, MASC's verbiage. So we just took it from the MASC website regarding public participation at school committee meetings and just made, just substituted their language for the language in B, and then added punctuation in the first sentence in the paragraph right before the lettered ABC section.
Move approval.
I'll second, but I just have a question.
Go ahead.
Or maybe I shouldn't have seconded, because it says public comment, but on our agendas, it says public participation.
Good point.
So, and then in the sentence above this in A, it says public participation. So I just feel like we should, well, in a few other places, so I feel like we should be consistent.
I don't disagree with that, so, because I think because we literally just copied it straight from
Right, right. I mean,
MASC. So I
it's-
think if we keep it in line with public participation, not public comment, if we just change the word comment to participation, that should just make everything line up.
Move approval as amended.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, 500.
And that's all I had, and just for the record, it was a 15-minute policy review
Yeah, it
committee
was.
meeting, so I've beat my previous 20-minute record, so we keep them nice and efficient with my policy review subcommittee, and I thank them for their time and dedication to everything, every week that we have it.
Thank you. Any other school business? I would just remind people that, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Well, Joyce had something. Go ahead, Joyce.
I just wanted to say thank you to Mrs. Chandler and Ms. Cote for the newsletters. They've been really great about sharing their newsletters, and I really appreciate that. They take the time to do that. And also Mrs. Kavicki from the high school. It's not a newsletter, but she's been sharing their announcements. She's been, making a point to send them by email, and I really appreciate that.
Is that the Friday news?
No,
Not
Okay,
yet.
so you'll be getting that.
okay, from the
'Cause
high
They do
school.
put out, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
all right, thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, and on that note, I expressed to Mrs. Kavicki that I was disappointed we couldn't make the AP dual enrollment night tonight, or
Right,
am I
yeah.
correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so I hope it went well, and I'm sure we all wished we could have been there. I just wanted to give people an update, because literally we met today, on the Park Scholarship investment. The good news is that thanks to DECA, we had 3 very attentive students learning about investing today, 2 sophomores and a senior. And we met for over an hour, and I thought it went well. The bad news is that we started investing on October 1st, and at the end of the year, at December 31st, we had lost about 4% of our investment, of our fund. Mr. Palladino was not happy, but I convinced him that that's the nature of investing, that you cannot respond to one quarter. So we'll be meeting again in April, after we've got 3 months' worth of, additional months' worth of data, and hopefully the results will be better. And finally, at the moment, there is $7,500 and change in cash, which was bothersome because I told the investment manager that we needed at least $9,000 for 3 scholarships, 3 $3,000 scholarships. It's going to grow from there. And the investment manager got lucky. I'm sorry to say that one of the 3 students did not maintain a B average, and so they are not eligible for their $3,000 scholarship. How we respond to that remains to be seen, which is to say we theoretically could hold the $3,000 and see if at the end of a year from now, they have managed to get back to a cumulative 3.0. I didn't ask Mr. Palladino if that's the plan he was going to do. There is another scholarship that does it that way. But 2 of the STEAM scholars have requested their $3,000 and are doing well. That's my report.
Thank you. And good luck next quarter. Any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
I just want to remind people that our next meeting is next week, February 6th, and we are going to have an executive session. Has that been verified?
That's correct.
Okay, so at 5:30, we have another executive session
Correct.
coming up February 6th. It is looking like we have a pretty good agenda. We're going to get a lot done on February 6th, so I'm considering canceling our end of February meeting and meeting again in beginning of March, but we can verify that the end of next meeting, see where we stand. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, 500. Thank you.